Name of the topic is drainage. So in this session we will be learning about first what is a drainage basin. Second, we will understand about a water divide. Third, we will discuss about the different drainage systems in India. Fourth, we will discuss the difference between the Himalayan rivers and the peninsular rivers. Fifth, we will talk about the Himalayan rivers, which include the Indus river system, the Ganga river system and the Brahmaputra river system. Then we will talk about the Namami Gange program. Then we will move on to talk about the peninsular rivers, which include the Narmada basin, the Tapi basin, the Godavari basin, the Mahanadi basin, the Kaveri basin and the Krishna basin. Lastly, we will talk about the lakes and their importance or significance, and we will move on to talk about river pollution, and lastly we will discuss about the National River Conservation Program or the National River Conservation Plan. So let us start. First, we will be talking about a drainage basin. What do we mean by a drainage basin? Well, the term drainage describes the river system of an area. Small streams flowing from different directions come together to form the main river, which ultimately drains into a large water body such as a lake or a sea or an ocean. The area that is drained by a single river system is called the drainage basin. The world's largest drainage basin is of the Amazon River. So this is about the drainage basin. Now what do we mean by a water divide? Any elevated area such as a mountain or an upland which separates two drainage basin is known as a water divide. For example, Ambala is located on the water divide between the Indus and the Ganga river system. Now let us talk about the different drainage systems in India. The drainage systems of India are mainly controlled by the broad relief features of the subcontinent. Accordingly, the Indian rivers are divided into two major groups: A, the Himalayan rivers, B, the peninsular rivers. Now, apart from originating from the two major physiographic regions of India, the Himalayan and the peninsular rivers are different from each other in many ways. So, let us look at the difference between the Himalayan rivers and the peninsular rivers. Most of the Himalayan rivers are perennial, which means that they have water throughout the year. These rivers receive water from rain as well as from the melted snow from the lofty mountains. The two major Himalayan rivers, that is the river Indus and the Brahmaputra river, originate from the north of the mountain ranges. They have cut through the mountains, making gorges. The Himalayan rivers have long courses from their source to the sea, and therefore they perform intensive erosional activity in their upper courses and carry huge loads of silt and sand. Whereas in the middle and the lower courses, these rivers form meanders, oxbow lakes and many other depositional features in their floodplains. They also have well-developed deltas. Whereas on the other hand, a large number of the peninsular rivers are seasonal as their flow is dependent on rainfall. During the dry season, even the large rivers have reduced flow of water in their channels. The peninsular rivers therefore have shorter and shallower courses as compared to their Himalayan counterparts. However, some of them originate in the central highlands and flow towards the west, whereas most of the rivers of the peninsular India originate in the western Ghats and flow towards the Bay of Bengal. Now let us look at the Himalayan rivers and the peninsular rivers one by one. First, we shall be discussing about the Himalayan rivers. So the major Himalayan rivers are the Indus, the Ganga and the Brahmaputra. These rivers are long and are joined by many large and important tributaries. First, let us discuss about the Indus river system. The Indus plain has a very gentle slope. With a total length of 2900 kilometers, the Indus is one of the longest rivers of the world. A little over a third of the Indus basin is located in India. Ladakh, Jammu and Kashmir, Himachal Pradesh and Punjab, and the rest of it lies in Pakistan. According to the regulations of the Indus Water Treaty that was signed in 1960, India can use only 20% of the total water that is carried by the Indus River system. This water is used for irrigation in Punjab, Haryana, and southern and western parts of Rajasthan. Now let us talk about the course of the river Indus. The river Indus rises in Tibet near Lake Mansarovar. Flowing west, it enters India in the Ladakh, where it forms a picturesque gorge in this part. Several tributaries, that is the Zaskar, the Nubra, the Shyok, and the Hunza, join it in the Kashmir region. The Indus flows through Baltistan and Gilgit and emerges from the mountains at Attock. The Satluj, the Beas, the Ravi, the Chenab, and the Jhelum join together to enter the Indus near Mithankot in Pakistan. Beyond this, the Indus flows southwards, eventually reaching the Arabian Sea east of Karachi. Now, second Himalayan river is the Ganga river system. So, let us have a look at its course. The headwaters of the Ganga, called the Bhagirathi, is fed by the Gangotri glacier and is joined by Alaknanda at Devprayag in Uttarakhand. At Haridwar, the Ganga emerges from the mountains onto the plains. The Ganga is joined by many tributaries from the Himalayas, a few of them being major rivers such as the Yamuna, the Ghaghara, the Gandak, and the Kosi. The river Yamuna rises from Yamunotri glacier in the Himalayas, where it flows parallel to Ganga and as a right bank tributary meets Ganga at Allahabad. The Ghaghara, the Gandak, and the Kosi rise in the Nepal Himalaya. They are the rivers which flood parts of the northern plains every year, causing widespread damage to life and property, whereas they also enrich the soil for agricultural use. The main tributaries which come from the peninsular uplands are the Chambal, the Betwa, and the Son. These rise from semi-arid areas and have shorter courses and do not carry much water in them. Enlarged with the waters from its right and left bank tributaries, the Ganga flows eastwards till Farakka in West Bengal. This is the northernmost point of the Ganga Delta. The river bifurcates here. One, the Bhagirathi Hooghly, which is a distributary, flows southwards through the deltaic plains to the Bay of Bengal, whereas second, that is the main stream, flows southwards into Bangladesh and is joined by the Brahmaputra. Further downstream, it is known as the Meghna. This mighty river, with waters from the Ganga and the Brahmaputra, flows into the Bay of Bengal. The delta formed by these rivers is known as the Sundarban Delta. The Sundarban Delta derived its name from the Sundari tree, which grows well in the marshland. It is the world's largest and fastest growing delta. It is also the home for the Royal Bengal tiger. The length of the Ganga is over 2500 kilometers. Now let us talk about the Namami Gange program. It is an integrated conservation mission approved as a flagship program by the Union Government in June 2014 to accomplish the twin objectives of effective abatement of pollution, conservation and regeneration of the national river Ganga. Now let us move on to the third river of the Himalaya, that is the Brahmaputra river system. The Brahmaputra rises in Tibet east of Mansarovar Lake, very close to the sources of Indus and the Satluj. It is slightly longer than the Indus and most of its course lies outside India. It flows eastwards parallel to the Himalayas. On reaching the Namcha Barwa, it takes a U-turn and enters India in Arunachal Pradesh through a gorge. Here it is called the Dihang and is joined by the Dibang, the Lohit and many other tributaries to form the Brahmaputra in Assam. Brahmaputra is known as the Sangpo in Tibet and Jamuna in Bangladesh. In Tibet, the river carries a smaller volume of water and less silt as it is cold and a dry area. In India, it passes through a region of high rainfall, and here the river carries a large volume of water and considerable amount of silt. The Brahmaputra has a braided channel in its entire length in Assam and forms many riverine islands. Every year, during the rainy season, the river overflows its banks, causing widespread devastation due to floods in Assam and Bangladesh. Unlike other North Indian rivers, the Brahmaputra is marked by huge deposits of silt on its bed, causing the river bed to rise. The river also shifts its channel frequently. So this was about the three Himalayan rivers, namely the Indus, the Ganga and the Brahmaputra. Now let us discuss about the peninsular rivers. The main water divide in peninsular India is formed by Western Ghats, which runs from north to south close to the western coast. Most of the major rivers of the peninsula, such as the Mahanadi, Godavari, Krishna, Kaveri, flows eastwards and drains into the Bay of Bengal. These rivers make deltas at their mouths, and there are numerous small streams flowing west of the Western Ghats. The Narmada and Tapi are the only long rivers which flow west and make estuaries. The drainage basins of the peninsular rivers are comparatively smaller in size when compared to the Himalayan rivers. So let us discuss each of the peninsular rivers now. First, let us talk about the Narmada basin. The Narmada rises in the Amarkantak hills in Madhya Pradesh. It flows towards the west in a rift valley which is formed due to faulting. On its way to the sea, the Narmada creates many picturesque locations. The marble rocks near Jabalpur, where the Narmada flows through a deep gorge, and the Dhuadhar Falls, where the river plunges over steep rocks, are some of the notable examples. All the tributaries of Narmada are very short, and most of these join the main stream at right angles. The Narmada basin covers parts of Madhya Pradesh and Gujarat. Now let us move on to talk about the Tapi basin. The Tapi rises in the Satpura ranges in the Betul district of Madhya Pradesh. It also flows in a rift valley parallel to the Narmada, but it is much shorter in length. Its basin covers parts of Madhya Pradesh, Gujarat and Maharashtra. The coastal plains between the Western Ghats and the Arabian Sea are very narrow. Hence, the coastal rivers are short. The main west-flowing rivers are the Sabarmati, the Mahi, the Bharatpuzha and the Periyar. Now, after discussing about the Tapi basin, let us move on to discuss about the Godavari basin. The Godavari is the largest peninsular river. It rises from the slopes of the Western Ghats in the Nasik district of Maharashtra, and its length is about 1500 kilometers. It drains into the Bay of Bengal, and its drainage basin is also the largest among the peninsular rivers. The basin covers parts of Maharashtra, which is nearly 50% of the basin area that is lying in Maharashtra, then the Madhya Pradesh, Odisha and Andhra Pradesh. The Godavari is joined by many tributaries such as the Purna, the Vardha, the Pranhita, the Manjra, the Vainganga and the Penganga. The last three tributaries are very large, namely the Manjra, the Vainganga and the Penganga. Because of its length and the area it covers, it is also known as the Dakshin Ganga. Now let us move on to discuss about the Mahanadi basin. The Mahanadi rises in the highlands of Chhattisgarh. It flows through Odisha to reach the Bay of Bengal, and the length of this river is about 860 kilometers. Its drainage basin is shared by Maharashtra, Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand and Odisha. Let us talk about the Krishna River basin. The Krishna River basin rises from a spring near Mahabaleshwar and flows for about 1400 kilometers and reaches the Bay of Bengal. The Tungabhadra, the Koyna, the Ghat Prabha, the Musi and the Bhima are some of its tributaries. Its drainage basin is shared by Maharashtra, Karnataka and Andhra Pradesh. Now let us move on to talk about the Kaveri basin. The Kaveri rises in the Brahmagiri range of the Western Ghats and it reaches the Bay of Bengal in the south of Cuddalore in Tamil Nadu. The total length of the river is about 760 kilometers, and its main tributaries are Amravati, Bhavani, Hemavati, and Kabini. Its basin drains parts of Karnataka, Kerala, and Tamil Nadu. The river Kaveri makes the second biggest waterfall in India, known as the Shivasamudram Falls. The hydroelectric power that is generated from these falls is supplied to Mysore, Bangalore, and the Kolar Gold Field. Besides these major rivers, there are some smaller rivers flowing towards the east. They are the Damodar, the Brahmani, the Baitarni, and the Subarnrekha. Now, 71% of the world's surface is covered with water, but just 97% of that is salt water. Of the 3% that is available as fresh water, 3/4 of it is trapped as ice. Now let us see the importance of lakes. India has many lakes. These differ from each other in size and other characteristics. Most lakes are permanent, whereas some contain water only during the rainy season, like the lakes in the basins of inland drainage of the semi-arid regions. There are some lakes which are the result of the action of glaciers and ice sheets, while others have been formed by wind, river action, and human activities. A meandering river across the floodplain forms cutoff that later develops into oxbow lakes, whereas the splits and bars form lagoons in the coastal areas. For example, the Chilika Lake, the Pulicat Lake, and the Koleru Lake. Lakes in the region of inland drainage are sometimes seasonal. For example, the Sambar Lake in Rajasthan, which is a saltwater lake. Its water is also used for producing salt. Most of the freshwater lakes are in the Himalayan region. They are of glacial origin. In other words, they are formed when glaciers dug out a basin which was later filled with snowmelt. The Wular Lake in Jammu and Kashmir, in contrast, is the result of tectonic activity. It is also the largest freshwater lake of India. The Dal Lake, the Bhimtal, the Nainital, the Loktak, and the Barapani are some other important freshwater lakes in India. Apart from the natural lakes, the damming of the rivers for the generation of hydel power has also led to the formation of lakes. For example, the Guru Gobind Singh, which is on the Bhakra Nangal project. So this was about the lakes and how they are formed. Now let us look at the importance or the significance of the lakes. Lakes are of great value to human beings. A lake helps to regulate the flow of a river, and during heavy rains it prevents flooding, whereas during the dry season it helps to maintain an even flow of water. Lakes can also be used for developing hydel power. They can moderate the climate of the surroundings, maintain the aquatic ecosystem, enhance the natural beauty, and help in developing tourism and provide recreation. Now, after discussing about the significance of lakes, let us move on to talk about river pollution. The growing domestic, municipal, industrial, and agricultural demand for water from rivers has naturally affected the quality of water. As a result, more and more water is being drained out of the rivers, reducing their volume. On the other hand, a heavy load of untreated sewage and industrial effluents are emptied into the rivers. This affects not only the quality of water but also the self-cleansing capacity of the river. Concern over rising pollution in our rivers have led to the launching of various action plans to clean the rivers. For example, the National River Conservation Plan, that is the NRCP. So let us discuss about this NRCP, which is the National River Conservation Plan. The river cleaning program in the country was initiated with the launching of the Ganga Action Plan, that is GAP, in 1985. The Ganga Action Plan was expanded to cover other rivers under the National River Conservation Plan NRCP in the year 1995. The objective of NRCP was to improve the quality of water in the rivers, which are major water sources in the country, through the implementation of pollution abatement work.